My stepdaughter said a real father would give her everything. So I closed her wedding account, invested that money in myself, and left. Her dad got the bills, I got peace. Don't forget to subscribe and share your experiences below. Let's get started. My name's Jason. I'm 45, and I run a small electrical contracting business in Austin. Nothing flashy, just long hours, worn knuckles, and enough return clients to keep the lights on. It's not the kind of job that gets you applause, but it's honest. It puts you to bed tired in a way that feels earned. That mattered to me once. Still does, in a way. I never had children of my own. Not by accident, not by design, just the slow erosion of chances worn away by bad timing, bad luck, and women who either didn't want kids or already had them. By the time I turned 40, the idea of starting a family from scratch felt like building a house during a storm. Too late. Too much. So when I met Helen, divorced, elegant, a woman with shadows behind her eyes, and she told me she had 2 kids in their late teens, I told myself this was the next best thing. No diapers, no midnight feedings. Just the chance to be part of something. Maybe not from the beginning, but from a chapter that still mattered. Their names were Claire and Lucas. Claire was 20 when I met her. A college junior with an easy smile and an edge to her voice that never quite left. Lucas was 18, quiet, already 2 years into a degree he didn't seem to care about. Their father, Rick, had left a decade earlier, vanished into another state and another life, and only surfaced when he wanted to play hero with a gift card or a late Venmo transfer. He was the man who gave them blood but nothing else. I thought that would matter. I thought it would give me a chance. I was wrong. The first time I met Claire, she shook my hand without looking at me. Lucas gave me a nod, like I was a server delivering a drink. But I didn't take it personally. They were Helen's kids. I was the outsider. I knew it would take time. What I didn't know, what I refused to believe, was that time doesn't heal resentment when it's fed daily with silence. Still, I tried. I took them out to dinner, paid for their birthdays, listened to them talk about things I didn't understand: Spotify artists, college politics, influencers, coding boot camps. I pretended to care because I thought that's what a stepfather does. You build the bridge even when they throw rocks at you from the other side. Helen always said, "They're just young. Don't take it personally." That became her refrain. Every time Claire dismissed me in conversation. Every time Lucas responded to my questions with one-word answers. Every time I was left out of a family photo or skipped in a group text. They're just young. Maybe. Or maybe they had decided from the beginning that I was temporary. Placeholder. Not a man, but a body Helen chose because she didn't want to be alone. Still, I stayed. Because I believed in showing up. Because I believed that presence mattered more than blood. Because I believed, stupidly, that if I just worked hard enough, gave enough, they would see me not as a paycheck, but as a person. I put Lucas through school. Full tuition, books, meal plan. When he changed majors twice, I didn't say a word. Just paid the difference. When he failed a class, I covered the summer course. When he wanted to move off campus sophomore year, I co-signed the lease and paid the rent when his roommate bailed. Not once did he say thank you. Not once did he ask if it was okay. Claire needed help with her wedding. The venue was expensive. Her fiancé came from a family who couldn't contribute much. I paid for the down payment, the photographer, the flowers. I helped her pick out table linens and pretended to care about the differences between ivory and champagne. I spent my weekends driving to showrooms and tasting cakes I didn't want to eat. I even offered to cover the honeymoon flights. I wasn't trying to buy love. I want that to be clear. I didn't expect them to call me Dad or toast me at the reception. I just wanted recognition, a nod, a quiet moment where one of them looked me in the eye and said, "You didn't have to, but you did, and we see it." That moment never came. Instead, I became invisible in plain sight. In family group chats, my name was always the last tag. Helen, Claire, Lucas, oh, and Jason too. In photos, I stood at the edge, holding coats or drinks or bags while the real family posed for pictures. On holidays, I was the one carving the turkey, washing the dishes, driving everyone to the airport, and still I was the afterthought. But I endured it, because I loved Helen, or thought I did. And because I kept telling myself that this was just the hard part before the reward. That one day they would grow up and look back and realize what I had done. That maybe, just maybe, I would earn a place in their stories. I even told myself I was lucky. Some nights I would sit alone in the garage, in the old leather chair nobody else used, and sip bourbon until the silence filled the space where pride used to be. I told myself that this was what being a man meant. Not recognition, not appreciation, but sacrifice without applause. Bearing the weight so others didn't have to. Paying the bills, fixing the leaks, catching the blame. And when Helen smiled at me across the dinner table, I believed it was enough. But love without defense is complicity. And Helen never defended me. Every time Claire rolled her eyes at me, Helen stayed quiet. Every time Lucas made a snide comment about how, we get it, you work hard, she changed the subject. Every time I brought up feeling excluded, she responded with the same, tired phrase, they're just young. No, Helen. They were grown. Old enough to drink, to vote, to make decisions that carried weight, but not old enough, apparently, to offer basic decency to the man paying their bills. And you let it happen. Again and again. I began to notice the small things. Like how they never remembered my birthday, even though I never missed theirs. Like how they rolled their eyes when I brought up work, as if a man who wore a tool belt had nothing useful to say. Like how every gift I gave was treated like a transaction. Expected. Forgettable. Disposable. I bought Lucas a laptop for school. Top of the line because I didn't want him to fall behind. 3 weeks later, he asked for a different model because his friends had better specs. No, thank you. Just, can you exchange it? Claire once borrowed my truck for a weekend trip and returned it with an empty tank and a cracked taillight. Didn't mention it. Just tossed me the keys and said, thanks. Your brakes are squeaky, by the way. And still I smiled. Still I tried. Still I told myself that love meant endurance. But love without boundaries is self-erasure. And I was disappearing. Slowly. Quietly. Like fog evaporating under a rising sun. Not gone all at once. Just less visible every day. I remember one night in particular. Helen and I had gone out for dinner, our anniversary. I'd made reservations at the same restaurant we went to after our wedding. It was supposed to be romantic. A reset. We sat across from each other, candles flickering between us, and for a moment, it felt like it used to. Then her phone buzzed. A text from Claire. She read it, smiled, and laughed. She's asking if we can cover the catering deposit a week early. Says her fiancé's parents are still figuring things out. I nodded, took a sip of wine, tried not to flinch. You don't have to, Helen said, almost absent-mindedly. But it would mean a lot. There it was again, the assumption. Not a request. A direction wrapped in a shrug. I paid the deposit the next morning. Not because I had to, but because I didn't know how to say no anymore. It was a Thursday, late spring. The kind of day that smells like wet pavement and pollen, the world trying to bloom again, even if no one asked it to. I had gotten off work early, picked up some supplies from the hardware store, and swung by a boutique downtown Claire liked. I don't remember what prompted it. Maybe guilt, maybe routine. I bought a set of handcrafted glassware for her wedding registry, a delicate box of bath oils, and a wool throw for their new home. Nothing essential, but nice. The kind of things that say, I see you. The clerk wrapped everything slowly, like it mattered. She said, you're a good dad. I didn't correct her, just smiled, paid, walked out into the wind. When I got home, the house was quiet. Helen was still at her Pilates class, and I could hear Claire's voice drifting down the hallway. She was on a call. Her bedroom door was cracked open. I didn't mean to eavesdrop. I had gifts in my arms, keys between my teeth. But when someone mentions you by name, your ears catch fire. She was laughing. I know, right? A real dad would give me everything. Jason just pretends to be generous. Like it's charity or something. I froze. Not because of what she said. I'd heard worse. But because of how she said it. Like it was a punchline. Like my effort, my money, my presence, all of it was a performance to her. A game she had already won. The box in my hands tilted. One of the glasses inside shifted, tapped the other. That sound, glass against glass, felt like a church bell in my ribs. I backed away slowly, set the box down on the kitchen counter. I didn't go back to the hallway, didn't knock on her door, didn't confront her. What would have been the point? She had spoken her truth. So I decided it was time I spoke mine. Not in words, but in absence. I didn't sleep that night. I lay beside Helen, eyes wide open, listening to her breathe, wondering how much she knew, wondering if she had ever stopped to imagine what it felt like to be tolerated inside your own home. If she'd ever considered what kind of man you become when every small kindness you give is twisted into weakness. By morning, my decision was clear. First, I drove to the bank. I had set up a joint account for Claire's wedding months earlier. $10,000, auto-transferred from my savings, sitting there like a soft promise. I closed the account, moved every cent into my private portfolio. No explanations, just silence and a signature. Then I called the vendors. Venue, florist, DJ, the woman doing the cake. One by one, I canceled every contract I had signed. Some money was lost. Most was refunded. I didn't tell Claire. I didn't tell Helen. I just vacuumed my presence out of their plans like it had never been there. By noon, I had packed a small bag, hiking boots, 3 flannel shirts, a rain jacket, and the bottle of scotch Helen gave me last Christmas. I booked a flight to Montana, found a rental cabin near a lake, buried in trees and weather and silence. Left the house without a note. By the time the plane took off, my phone had started ringing. I didn't answer. Montana was cold and clean, the kind of air that feels earned. The cabin was small, 1 room, with a stove that smelled like cedar and a bed with blankets stiff from lack of use. The lake behind it was half frozen. No TV, no internet, no signal strong enough to carry voices soaked in entitlement. I chopped wood, walked trails, slept early. I'd wake up in the dark and sit on the porch while the sky turned gray, listening to nothing but the wind scraping through pine. My phone buzzed sometimes. I kept it off. On the 4th day, I opened a message from Helen. Just 1 line. Claire's devastated. What did you do? I didn't respond. I turned the phone off again and watched the fog lift from the lake. That was the first time in years I felt breath move through my body without resistance. Like I had been carrying someone else's lungs for too long, and finally got mine back. The next message came 2 days later, from Helen again. Rick's back. He said he'll handle it. He's furious. I laughed out loud. Rick? The myth, the phantom, the man who vanished before Claire even hit puberty, was furious. Of course he was. He had shown up for once, expecting to wave a checkbook he didn't have, only to find out the bills had multiplied in his absence. Because what Claire never understood, what none of them did, was that I had already paid most of it. Quietly, behind the scenes, florist deposits, venue fees, photographer retainers. The wedding she had planned like a queen was already halfway built, on my dime, and I had pulled the foundation out from under it. The next call came from Rick himself. I let it go to voicemail. Later, I listened to his voice. Smooth, tense, trying to play reasonable. Jason, we need to talk. Claire's in pieces. You've blindsided everyone. This isn't how families operate. Call me back. I didn't, because I wasn't family. Not to them. To them, I was a transaction. A background benefactor. A man who worked himself raw so their lives could stay soft. That night in Montana, I sat by the fire and drank the scotch Helen gave me. Tasted like smoke and regret. Outside, snow began to fall in slow, thick drifts. The kind of snow that buries footprints. The kind that makes you forget you were ever followed. I thought about the last 5 years, the dinners, the holidays, the birthdays. Me at the grill. Me behind the camera. Me standing at the edge of every moment like a hired hand. The quiet, constant humiliation of showing up and being looked through. Not seen. Not heard. Just used. Claire's voice echoed in my head. A real dad would give me everything. I had, and still I was fake. Disposable. The next message came a week later. Claire, No greeting. Just words. I realized I was wrong. You were always there and I was too blind to see it. I'm sorry. I read it twice, then turned the phone off again. Apologies come easy when the money stops. Guilt grows fast in the shadow of consequences. But respect, real respect, is slower. It doesn't bloom in absence. It has to be grown while someone's still present. I stayed in Montana for 2 more weeks. When I returned, the house felt different. Smaller. Quieter. Helen avoided my eyes. She didn't ask where I'd been. She didn't mention the wedding. She just said, "We should talk." And I said, "We should have years ago." There was no fight. No slammed doors. Just distance. Me in the guest room. Her in ours. A slow drift toward the inevitable. Lucas reached out months later. Said he understood now. Said he was drowning in bills, rent, loans. That he finally saw what I had carried for them. I didn't respond. Because understanding is not the same as change. And I was no longer in the business of rescuing grown children from the consequences of their contempt. Helen didn't scream when I returned. She didn't throw anything or collapse into tears. She just stood in the doorway as I wheeled my bag into the living room. Eyes blank. Hands folded. I said nothing. She didn't ask anything. And in that silence, we both knew the shape of the new world I'd carved in Montana. The wedding was off. Not officially, no press release, no dramatic announcement, but logistically, spiritually, practically, it was dead. Claire had spent months building a fantasy with my money, but fantasies collapse quickly when the scaffolding is removed. She tried to patch it together. She begged. She threatened. She looped in Helen. She looped in Rick. But the bills didn't care about her lineage. They just wanted to be paid. And Rick, God bless the man, tried. He came back like some long-lost cavalry. Hairline higher than I remembered. Voice still wrapped in that same lazy charm that had once convinced Helen to marry him, and later, to forgive his absence. He showed up at our house the day after I returned from Montana. Walked right up to my porch like a man who had earned the right. He didn't knock, just waited. I opened the door. He gave me a tight smile. "Hey," he said, like we were old friends who had just drifted apart. I nodded, let the silence answer him. I wanted to talk. About Claire. About the wedding. I stepped outside, closed the door behind me. Talk. He shifted his weight like a teenager caught in a lie. "Look, I know things got complicated. I wasn't around. I get that. But Claire's hurting. She said you pulled the plug on everything, and now we're scrambling. Vendors, deposits, timelines. It's a mess." I said nothing. "She's upset," he continued. "And I don't blame her. I mean, you kind of blindsided everyone, right?" I laughed then. Not loud. Just one breath, sharp, bitter. "Blindsided?" He blinked. "Well, yeah." I stepped closer. "Rick, let me ask you something. When Claire graduated college, who paid for her off-campus apartment?" He paused. "When she needed new tires. When she broke her phone the week before finals. When she wanted a second dress for the rehearsal dinner, who paid for that?" He glanced down. "I wasn't always in the picture. I know." "No," I said, voice flat. "You were never in the picture. I was the frame. I held it all up. And now, when the glass cracks, you show up to tell me how to fix it?" He shifted again, his confidence thinning. "I'm not saying it was right. I'm just trying to help. You're here because the bills arrived with my name crossed out. And now you're realizing what being a father actually costs." That shut him up. I didn't invite him in. I didn't offer coffee. He left 30 minutes later, muttering something about looking into some options. I never saw him again after that. Over the next few weeks, the fallout spread like smoke through the cracks of our already brittle house. Claire sent emails. First angry, then pleading, then quiet. At some point, they stopped entirely. Lucas texted. Short messages, vague apologies, the kind that arrive too late and land too soft. But it was Helen's silence that rang the loudest. She moved around the house like a guest. Didn't ask why I'd done it. Didn't say I was wrong. Just made dinner for one instead of two. Folded her laundry in a separate room. stopped saying goodnight. Some nights I caught her crying, soft, careful sobs behind a closed bathroom door. I didn't interrupt. We were both grieving something. Her idea of family. My belief that effort could rewrite blood. The truth is, I had paid the price for being temporary. I had let them rent my presence like a luxury suite. High ceilings, working heat, room service. And the moment I asked for acknowledgement, they checked out. Left the towels in the sink. Never looked back. I think the worst part wasn't the disrespect. It was how casually it came. Like I was foolish for ever expecting anything else. Claire's wedding never happened. The groom disappeared 2 months after the financial walls fell in. Said he needed to reevaluate. Translation. He didn't want to marry a woman who was suddenly looking for handouts instead of upgrades. She blamed me, of course. None of this would have happened if you hadn't sabotaged everything, she wrote in one email. I didn't reply, because sabotage implies betrayal. And you can't betray people who never accepted you to begin with. Lucas had his own reckoning. After graduation, he moved to Seattle. Bright-eyed, unprepared, and completely unmoored. Within 6 months, he was 3 months behind on rent, defaulted on a credit card, and back living with Helen, tail between his legs. I didn't offer advice. I didn't offer help. One afternoon, he sat across from me in the kitchen, drinking a cup of coffee I didn't make for him. You were right, he said finally. About all of it. I didn't look up from my paper. Which part? That we treated you like a bank. Like some background character. And now, he exhaled. Now I see the cost. I folded the paper, met his eyes. Regret, I said, isn't respect. Don't confuse the two. He didn't reply, just nodded, got up, left the room. It wasn't an apology. Not really, but it was more than I'd ever gotten before. And maybe, in that sliver of silence, there was something like understanding. But understanding doesn't rebuild trust. And I was done building for people who wouldn't sweep the floor. Eventually, Helen and I stopped pretending. We sold the house. She moved in with her sister. I rented a small condo near the river. 1 bedroom, tall windows, quiet floors. No shared spaces. No blended histories. Just me and a view of something that didn't expect anything from me. The day we signed the divorce papers, Helen said, I never wanted it to end like this. I nodded. You just didn't want to stop taking. She didn't cry, just closed the folder, picked up her bag, walked out. No fanfare, no promises to stay friends, just the sound of a door closing. That was a year ago. Since then, I've rebuilt quietly. I take long walks in the morning. I go to work, come home, read in silence. Sometimes I pass parks filled with families. Stepdads pushing swings, teenagers rolling their eyes, mothers half smiling. And I wonder how many of those men are already fading. How many are being quietly erased while holding up someone else's dream? People talk about fatherhood like it's a title you can earn. But you can't. You're either claimed or you're a visitor. And I was never claimed. Just tolerated until I stopped paying. There's a sound a man's life makes when it breaks apart. Not a scream. Not a crash. Just the hush that follows when everything you held up finally lets go. Like the breath you didn't know you were holding. Like the silence between heartbeats when you realize you've been standing in the wrong home, loving the wrong people, being the wrong kind of man. It's been over a year now since the divorce. I've adjusted. Mostly. I live alone. A condo on the east edge of Austin. High enough to catch the city lights. Low enough to ignore them. 1 bedroom. No framed pictures. No shelves filled with keepsakes. Just clean lines, quiet mornings, and the relief of not hearing anyone else's footsteps. Some nights I sit on the balcony, bourbon in hand, and stare at the skyline. The hum of the city is softer here, almost like a whisper, not the kind that calls you, just the kind that says, you're still here, and that's enough. Helen and I haven't spoken since the final paperwork. No calls, no letters, no holidays with forced small talk or awkward encounters in familiar restaurants. We passed each other once at the grocery store. She was pushing a cart full of frozen dinners and talking into her phone. didn't see me. I walked right past her. And that was the first time I felt free. Claire eventually found someone else. Someone with money, I assume. Her social media tells stories filled with polished smiles and curated joy. They had a private ceremony in Napa, according to one post. No mention of family. No thanks. Just a caption that read, "Finally got the fairy tale I deserve. I hope it keeps." Lucas started a tech job downtown. He emailed me last month. Just a few lines. "I've been thinking about everything. I don't know how to make it right, but I want to. I know I was an idiot. I'm sorry." I didn't reply. Not out of cruelty. Just clarity. Because some bridges shouldn't be rebuilt. Some gaps exist for a reason. And trying to close them only drags you back into the fire you barely crawled out of. There's a belief people carry, that love is infinite, that forgiveness is always available, that family is forever. It's not. Love can rot. Forgiveness can dry up. And family is a contract. And I never signed mine. I signed checks. I signed school forms. I signed lease agreements. But not once did anyone sign up to love me back. And that's what broke me. Not the rejection, I could stomach that. Not the silence. I had learned to live inside that. What broke me was the expectation. That I would keep giving, keep paying, keep sacrificing, even after being stripped of every title except resource. That's what I was. That's all I ever was. And the moment I stopped performing, the moment I dared to say, "Enough," the illusion shattered. They never wanted a stepfather. They wanted a silent investor. I used to think peace came from holding everything together, from keeping the bills paid, the house warm, the kids fed, from being dependable, invisible, essential. I thought that made me strong. I thought that made me necessary. Now I know better. Peace comes when you stop being available to people who confuse your kindness with weakness. It comes when you pull the cord on the puppet show and watch the stage go dark. It comes when you realize that loving someone who only tolerates you isn't noble. It's self-destruction dressed in devotion. I've spent this past year quietly unlearning every lie I told myself. That I could earn their respect. That presence would rewrite blood. That patience would melt contempt. No, that's not how it works. You can't love someone into loyalty. You can't buy your way into family. You can't save people who don't believe you're worth saving. I know now. Every time I paid a bill, I was trying to buy permanence. Every time I showed up, I was hoping to be chosen. And every time I smiled through their indifference, I was signing up for more of it. But no more. I take care of myself now. My business is stable. My hands still work. My mind still runs sharp. I wake up alone, but at least I don't wake up pretending. No more quiet humiliations. No more dinners where I'm the one washing dishes while others tell stories I'm not invited into. The hardest part wasn't walking away from them. It was realizing I was never with them. And that's the thing nobody tells you, that sometimes the family you gave everything to was never yours to begin with. You were just a visitor, placeholder, a man standing on the front porch of someone else's home, holding the groceries, waiting to be let in, only to find the door locked, the lights off, and your name never written on the mailbox. I see other stepfathers now. At restaurants, in parks, holding jackets, driving kids, nodding while someone else rolls their eyes. And I wonder, how many of them are already cracking beneath the weight? How many are mistaking tolerance for trust, routine for belonging? I want to warn them. I want to say, be careful. Love can be a leash, and patience won't always set you free. But I don't. It's not my place. Everyone has to learn on their own. Some will be accepted. Most will not. And some, like me, will one day sit alone with a glass in hand, remembering a wedding that never happened, a son who never said thank you, a wife who never defended him. And still, it won't be regret that fills him. It'll be peace. Because once you've been told again and again that you're nothing, the only power you have left is to live like it. Not in bitterness. Not in revenge, but in liberation. So now I ask you, whoever's still reading, whoever's still listening, whoever's still hoping it turns out different, was I wrong? Was I wrong to stop paying for their dreams when I was never invited into them? Was I cruel to finally act on the truth they kept handing me, year after year, with their silence, their side glances, their careful exclusions? Was I wrong to believe that respect should cost something? Tell me, would you have stayed? Would you have kept giving? Or would you have done what I did, finally, fully, and without apology? Would you have walked away from a family that never let you in?